Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
On December 7th, I was living in Las Vegas. I had been living here for nearly a couple of years with my family. I came here in the late 30s. Of course, we heard on the news, on the radio, didn't have television then, about the attack on Pearl Harbor on Sunday, December 7th.
I was a midshipman at the Naval Academy, and we knew war was coming. We didn't know when or how, of course, and we were really shocked and surprised.
Me and my shipmate were talking about celebrating my birthday and having a good time on Saturday, December 6th.
Well, I was very young. I had just come home from playing football. I was 17 at the time, and I heard it on the radio. And then I met my friends. We went to the movies, and we were all shook up.
Well, I was asleep in my apartment with my wife out at Waikiki. I got a call about 8 o'clock. It said, "Get down there, we've been attacked."
There were a lot of people, including me, who didn't have a clue as to where Pearl Harbor was. Unless you had someone in the Navy or had been lucky enough to go to Hawaii, nobody knew where it was. No, it was a Sunday morning, and I'd been out late Saturday night, and when I got up, my mother told me Pearl Harbor had been bombed.
I was on a ranch with a horse, scraping manure out of the corral, and we listened to the car radio and heard about the war.
I was at home when I heard about it. My mother was very upset. Very upset. I remember there had been a group of girls, and they had gone down to a little restaurant. They had a little restaurant, and they had you could go in there and dance with the jukebox. And they had all been down there jitterbugging, and they came back by our store, and to get something to drink, and my mother told them about it.
I was a secretary at the YMCA. And the boys were, and they had a lot of telephone men that used to stay there. And I remember that morning, they were all gathered around that radio listening, and that's when I heard Pearl Harbor had hit. There was such a stillness, you know, when we heard the word. And of course then until you actually see it, you know, why.
I was in Mississippi in a cotton field, and when I heard about it, the white farmer was riding his horse through the cotton field, and he said, "You heard about the Japs blowing up Pearl Harbor?" And that's where it all started.
Well, of course, you know, we began to hear right away on the radio that the ships were being sunk in the harbor, and that we were at war, and young men were racing to join the Army.
You know, a lot of the guys said they thought the Navy was practicing, or they thought the Army was practicing, and they thought it ridiculous that they were practicing on Sunday. I never had that thought. I knew it was an attack.
You know, it didn't dawn on us that we were being attacked. At least I know I didn't.
I was sleeping, and when I heard the bombs go off, jumped up, ran out to the front of the barracks, and I could still hear the bombs, and I looked up and saw the planes going over, and I saw the red ball on the side.
And I saw that rising sun ball on the wings, that red ball. Holy mackerel, my heart dropped down to my knees.
A great many had seen the airplanes going by with the big meatball on the rising sun on the sides of the airplanes.
When that Japanese plane flew over my head, I knew we were in war.
It's war, and the impact of it just makes you almost freeze, you know.
I was thinking war. I was absolutely thinking war because I felt like, you know, this is the way it was going to be.
Things were in the islands, it was just so confusing. You just didn't know where to go or what to do, and anybody grab you and tell you to do something, you did it.
When they came through, they were all lined up, wing to wing, with 1,700 gallons of 100-octane gas. So when the Jap Zeros came in, boy, they just strafed them all, and that was it.
There were so many planes flying around, it was impossible to count how many it was. When I heard the first explosion, that was one of the bombs hitting at Pearl. Because, see, Pearl Harbor and Hickam Field are side by side.
When we got within 200 miles of Pearl, we were on a search mission that morning. We went on a search mission every morning and afternoon. We had been ordered to maintain radio silence and not to use the radios. We were to land at Pearl Harbor, Ford Island. As we neared Oahu, we heard, "Don't shoot, don't shoot, this is an American plane." So we continued on, and as we neared Oahu, we could see smoke coming up over the island, and we could also smell the spent ammunition. I knew something was happening, but I didn't know what. We used hand signals, like using the Morse code to hit our head. I batted on my head, you know, what's happening? And they said, you know, Pearl Harbor was being attacked.
Now, I did see the Arizona blow up. Now, we were that close to Pearl Harbor that over the buildings I could see the smoke. When that ship blew up, you knew something bad had happened over there. And all of a sudden, there was the darndest explosion you ever heard right outside the barracks, right outside the mess hall. So I ran to the door to see what was going on, and as I opened the door and looked up Hangar Avenue, hangars 7 and 9 went up. Debris flying everywhere. And I thought, what in the world? An airplane blew up in the hangar?
Then I looked over to the ship service, and I saw all of the people, the service people, running out and heading for the hills. So I went around the corner of the barracks and looked down and saw everything in flames. So we, all of us, you know, by now, everybody else is up and we're running. We're running down to the hangar.
But anyway, now I run outside and I'm all excited and shook up, and I didn't know what I was doing. I'm looking around and looking at all these airplanes flying around, and some guy was standing under the eave of another building. He reached out, grabbed me, and pulled me under there, and I didn't more than get under there. Here come another plane, machine gunning, and he took off about an inch or 2 inches of the eave of the building that we were standing under.
And about that time, another flight came over, and they dropped some 500-pound bombs in the hangar.
You know, we saw the smoke, but when we neared the island, we could see the end of the second attack. Guys were taking stretchers by me, and, you know, it was a continual line of guys who hadn't been injured, taking bodies over to the hospital.
Young man that was running with me, I didn't know him, had his side torn off from the shrapnel. So there wasn't nothing I could do, so I went on into the hangar.
So I went up Hangar Avenue, and somebody jumped out of one of the hangars and grabbed me and said, "You got to help me get these wounded over to the hospital."
I saw the most ungodly sight anyone ever wants to see. We've all seen those pictures of Battleship Row with the Arizona in flames and Oklahoma upside down. And the battleships that were in the exposed row were sunk. It was an ugly mess because the fire from the burning oil from the Arizona was drifting down. The West Virginia alongside us had been severely bombed and torpedoed and sunk. But what was kind of eerie is the flames from the Arizona were towering many feet into the air, and they illuminated us perfectly. All the rest of the Hawaiian Islands were completely black.
I don't know how I escaped getting hurt, but I did. I survived that day. Anybody says he wasn't scared that day, he's a liar. Because we had no defense. They knocked out about 95% of our fighter planes right on the ground up at Wheeler. And we had no defense. Oh yeah, we were crippled. We had hardly anything left to fight with. You know, Admiral Yamamoto said, he said, I'm afraid all we have done is awakened a sleeping giant. And he was right.
I didn't have a good feeling about the Japanese before the attack, and it was a hell of a lot worse after the attack. And I thought that we needed to get going and do something now, right now.
The main thing it did was get us mad and started a war. Their planning was superb, and their execution of the attack was superb. They had a much better, more modern fleet than we did. The greatest loss we had at Pearl Harbor that affected our war effort ultimately was the 2,000 some odd people who were killed.
The biggest thing is keep this country prepared. That's the biggest thing. Our slogan at the Pearl Harbor Survivors Association is, remember Pearl Harbor, keep America alert. That's our slogan.